Greetings! I'm Teek the Geek, and this is Comical Rants. Now, if you've been following Spider-Man, you may have heard by now that Peter Parker is dead. But fear not, fellow fans of the web-slinger. Peter Parker didn't die in Amazing Spider-Man number 700. He died a lot sooner than that. If I had to pick the exact moment, I'd say that issue number 418, way back in 1996, was the moment that Peter Parker really died. This was the issue near the end of the Clone Saga where the Marvel bullpen just threw their hands in the air and said, "Screw it, Norman Osborn is alive again and he's responsible for everything." To explain, let's take a look at the first 400 issues of Amazing Spider-Man, and then compare them with the last 300 or so. In the beginning, Spider-Man went through high school, started college, loved Gwen Stacy, lost Gwen Stacy, started dating Mary Jane, got shot down by Mary Jane, changed his costume, hooked up with the Black Cat for a while, got back together with Mary Jane, married her, and knocked her up. Friends died. Enemies died. Sometimes both at once. In short, things happened. So what's happened in the 300 issues since? Well, Peter was replaced by a clone, and then they took it back. MJ was about to deliver their daughter, and they took it back. Aunt May died, and they took it back. When J. Michael Straczynski started his run in 2001, Peter was a semi-single web-slinger whose most significant relationship was with Aunt May, who didn't know he was Spider-Man. Over the course of his run on the book, Aunt May discovered Pete's identity, Pete got back together with MJ, he became an Avenger, went public with his secret identity, and then they took it back. By the end of the 4 issues that concluded JMS's run, only one of those things was still true. So, when Dan Slott started his run on the book in 2008, Peter was a single web-slinger whose most significant relationship was with Aunt May, who didn't know he was Spider-Man and an Avenger. Now it's 5 years later, and Doc Ock is running around in Spider-Man's body. And coincidentally, I'm sure, it looks an awful lot like he's going to separate from MJ and get kicked off of the Avengers. So who wants to take bets that by the time Amazing Spider-Man number 1 hits the stands next year, Peter's going to be a single web-slinger whose most significant relationship is with Aunt May, who doesn't know he's Spider-Man? It's taken more than a decade, but a pattern has finally started to emerge. This is Spider-Man's life now, a never-ending series of reset. He's not a growing character anymore so much as a bonsai tree that gets clipped every couple of years to keep it the same shape. There's a reason so many Spider fans have been unhappy since the 90s, and this is it. I'm going to mix a bunch of metaphors here, but when Marvel put the genie back in the bottle during the Clone Saga storyline, they opened up Pandora's box. They've tipped their hand, and now we know exactly how far they'll go, and that anything written can, and probably will, be unwritten. It's a shame, because it's hard to feel suspense in a story where you know that nothing in it is going to make any lasting change to the status quo. Spider-Man has gone from a serialized storyline to what is essentially a glorified peanut strip, where the characters never grow or change. The ironic thing is that it was the Clone Saga that triggered this perpetual cycle of continuity meltdown. It's ironic because the original Clone storyline was written with the exact opposite mindset. Here's a bit from Gary Conway's foreword from the 1995 trade that collected the original Clone storyline. "We were talking about Marvel's tradition of dramatic change. Our characters' lives weren't static, as were the lives of characters in other companies' books at the time. New characters were introduced, old characters moved on, relationships changed, couples got married and had children, teenage heroes graduated high school and went to college, people died, and when people died in a Marvel comic, they were dead, and they stayed dead. How could I bring Gwen Stacy back from the dead without invalidating everything Marvel stood for? Our readers had experienced real pain because of her death. We couldn't cheapen their experience by saying Gwen had never really died. Their pain had to be honored. How could I do that and still fulfill Stan's mandate? The more I thought about it, the more I understood that bringing Gwen back from the dead was a proposition doomed to failure. Finally, I realized that was my story. Bringing Gwen back from the dead was a proposition doomed to failure." Enough said. A year after Conway wrote that foreword, Marvel brought Norman Osborn and Aunt May back from the dead, confirmed that Ben Reilly was the clone the whole time, and swept Baby May under the rug. At the same time, Marvel filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Financially, they're better now than they've ever been. Creatively, they are apparently still bankrupt. The philosophies that originally shaped the Marvel Universe have given way to mandates to keep these characters perpetually marketable to an imaginary demographic of new readers. The last 15 years of Spider-Man books feel more like elaborate what-if stories than a legitimate continuation of the mythology. And I don't know about you, but I think that's a real shame. I'd like to see these characters get out from under the shadow of looming retcons and actually grow and change again. Let me know how you feel in the comments down below. I'm Teek the Geek, and this has been Comical Rants.